Ah, yes, Francisco Franco, the Generalissimo, the fascist dictator of Spain who ruled from 1939 up until his death in 1975. In terms of longevity, he ruled for quite a long time, considering he was a fascist. So the fascists helped him to power, and you can imagine how disappointed, not to mention pissed off they must have been when they found out that Franco wasn't going to get involved in the war. But this was actually quite smart on Franco's part. Unlike his silly little allies in Europe, he was actually intelligent enough to realise, yeah, I've just come out of a violent civil war and I've just seized power and the country is an absolute shambles. The last thing that people want is another war. So he remained neutral during World War II, as much as possible anyway. And because he stayed out of the war, and not to mention because he was against communism, the West and NATO kind of allowed him to exist. In terms of the people he killed, Franco had the White Terror when he first came to power. Basically the opposite of the Red Terror. Rounding up and exterminating and not to mention terrifying anyone who chose to oppose the regime. Mainly socialists and communists. But this did also include liberals, Protestants, Jews, Catalan nationalists and so on. As far as the number of people he killed, Franco's regime implemented forced labour, executions and concentration camps which led to the deaths of 30 to 50,000 people. And if we include the White Terror, then this goes up to 100 to 200,000 people. As I said earlier, with the help of Mussolini and a certain Austrian man, the nationalist forces overthrew the democratically elected Second Republic of Spain. He prosecuted his political opponents, as you'd expect from a dictator, and he even repressed the languages of Basque and Catalan. He also assumed total control over the media, just as a dictator would. He effectively had total control over Spain. I will say one thing about Franco. The man knew how to dress. I mean, just look at that jacket. The man looks like a lion, and he could strangle a tiger with his bare hands. The King of Spain essentially lost power in 1931 due to municipal elections, and this brought in the Second Republic. The Republicans reduced the power and influence of the church, the property-owning elites, the military, and this pissed off a man like Franco who was an authoritarian rightist. In fact, his military academy back in the day was shut down because of these. He was penalised for criticising them at the time, but in 1933 he came back into the good graces of the government after the centre-right won elections. When he was brought into the good graces, he used his power to massacre leftists and put down various uprisings and revolts, which gradually escalated into the Civil War. During World War II, he sympathised with the Axis powers but didn't actually get involved. He did, however, send 50,000 volunteers to fight the Soviets. He also allowed Germany to use Spanish ports. After World War II, Franco's Spain was isolated. In 1953, he allowed the US to build some military bases in Spain in exchange for aid. I will say something about Franco though. As he got older, he avoided daily political affairs. If you like, he kind of almost pensioned himself off. He started to take a back seat from running the country, preferring to hunt and fish instead. The simpler life, I guess. And while this happened, police controls and censorship of the press started to relax. Spain started to see a lot more strikes, and some free market reforms were introduced. Tourism began to increase with the slower relaxation of the authoritarian fascist government, and Morocco gained its independence from Spain. In 1947, he actually declared that a king would succeed him, and in 1969 he actually handpicked Prince Juan Carlos, who was actually the grandson of King Alfonso XIII, the king who embraced the military dictatorship before the Second Republic of Spain. And while Carlos spent a lot of time standing side by side with Franco and even supported and endorsed the regime, he pressed for change the second he took the throne, legalising political parties for a start. And when Franco died in 1975, the first post-Franco elections took place in June 1977. And apart from an 18-hour-long coup d'etat in 1981, Spain has been democratic ever since. So there we have it. Francisco Franco, the man who effectively kept Spain trapped in the 1930s. Low-key though, 1939 till 1970, what was Spain doing? Still in fascism.